Good evening to all. It is our pleasure to invite you all for this new edition of Zentax Talks. So it is a weekly webinar, and the overwhelming participation from all the participants are encouraging. The queries raised by you at the time of webinar and also after that, also it is a motivating factor for us. The entire team is weekly expecting the webinar. So, and also some of the participants are asking for some of the particular topics, and then due to some times constraints, we are not able to talk on that particular topic asked by the participants. We take into account the topic that will be relevant for the members or the participant at the large. We have got the details of the participants with us, what is their background, and then with that only we are presenting these topics. We choose the topics which will be relevant, and then it will be used for many persons at large rather than a one person's. And also the participants have got a wide varied background. See, we have got the participants who are very, very deeply having knowledge in GST, and also the beginners in GST. So we are taking care of both these two groups simultaneously. So we may strike a balance between them. We do not go very basic level, and also we do not talk only about the very high level, so that both can benefit. We take a middle path so that the person who are just starting to know about GST, and also the person who are experts in GST getting some benefit out of the weekly webinar. So this is our intention. So you will be understanding, and then you will be noting this, because most of the time we try to avoid giving the sections and then subsection unless it is very, very essential. Because the person who is going to have a practical aspect is not very much worried about the section. They are very much about what is the practical aspect that has to be seen. So in this background only, for this webinar, we have taken the topic e-invoicing. So the topic for today's discussion is e-invoice. So anyone who has got a clarification required, just note it down and then put it in the chat box, so that we will be able to consolidate and then give you the reply at the end of the session. This is the slide which we put at the each and every webinar. So I need not repeat. Katrathu kaimannadavu kalladhathu ulagadavu. So what we have learned is only a handful, the sand that we can hold sandful, and then what we have not learned is just like the size of the world. So this is basic. So whatever the knowledge we have, the little knowledge we have, we are sharing with the people at large, so that everyone will be benefited by the sharing of the information. Sometimes the queries raised by you in these sessions are eye-opener for us. So we might not have understood, or we may not have thought of that situation, but these queries raised by you paves a new idea or brings in a new knowledge to us. So with this background, let me go into the topic. So before going into that, what is the origin? What is the origin for GST e-invoicing? So at the GST 37th GST Council 2019. So in that only there is an agenda note. See, in the GST Council meeting, you can access through all the agenda and also minutes of each and every GST Council meeting. So these agenda or the minutes will give a detailed explanation or give us an insight into the reason for introduction of amendment or what is the purpose. So in similar manner, here there is an agenda for this meeting which deals with e-invoicing. So for that, they have come because it requires a great technological improvement, because the technology should be robust, and then e-invoice means many people will be accessing to generate the invoices, and then for these purposes a technical group was constituted, and mostly it is from NIC, and all the other team members have constituted a technical group that was constituted by the GST Council Secretariat. They have given who are all the person by name, and then what is their qualification, and also this subgroup involved CA Institute. CA Institute. So that has been also acknowledged in the agenda. So as a member of CA Institute, I take great pride in being a part of this movement. So because CA Institute has also been part, I am also proud to announce this also to share with the people. So here, this 37th GST Council agenda, they specifically say that tech subgroup constituted by GST Council Secretariat drafted e-invoice standard in partnership with Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, ICAI. So this is a joint venture project, I can say, by the GST Council Secretariat and also with the CA Institute. Both have come together, joint hands, and then to develop this e-invoicing project. So the participation of the CA Institute also should be appreciated because they are the partners in nation building. So with this introduction, we shall go into what is the reason for, or what are the objects of e-invoicing systems, what are the advantages, what it wants to achieve. So in that agenda itself, they are giving why they want to go in for a e-invoice system. Better taxpayer services. So better taxpayer services. They say what are the taxpayer services, enhanced facilities, advantages for the taxpayers. So a single entry is sufficient. So once you generate, automatically that will go into your GSTR1 and also for generation of the e-way bill. So previously, prior to that, once you will be generating a invoice from your software or ERP system or a SAP, everything you will be generating, and then that again had to be fed into GSTR1. Now that requirement has gone. And also the e-way bill. E-way bill can be generated using the e-invoice data. So, and also input tax credit verification. So as soon as the GSTR1 is filed through e-invoice, there will be proper synchronization of the credit passing. So that is also one of the essential objective of this e-invoice project. So this is the advantages from the point of view of the taxpayers. What is the benefit for government? See, government doesn't do anything unless there is a benefit to the government by introduction. So there must be some benefits for the government through this e-invoice project. So what are the objectives or what are the benefits that the government wants to get out of this e-invoice project? That is also given in this agenda. So this agenda, they say reduction in tax evasion. So they are able to evasion. So complete trial of B2B. So origin, as soon as you are generating the e-invoice from the e-invoice portal, that data gets to the department, or they are aware of the fact that there is a transaction has happened. So there is a trial for the B2B invoices through this e-invoice system. Efficiency in tax administration. See, the fake invoice is one of the important problems faced under the GST era. So because people are giving the invoices without actually supplying goods or services, these are called fake invoices. So by giving these invoices, the other person will be able to enjoy the credit. So this is the intention. So through this e-invoice project, the fake invoice will get get out of the GST system. So these are all the objectives the government wants from this e-invoice project. Now the question arises, to whom this e-invoice provision is applicable? So this is very, very simple. Okay, this is very, very simple. There is a rule. There is a rule, that is rule 48. See, there is nowhere it has been defined what is an e-invoice. They are not defined what is an e-invoice. They simply say that is invoice prepared under rule 48.4. So this is the e-invoice. What is the invoice prepared as per this rule 48.4 is the e-invoice. So what this rule says? What this rule says? This rule says the class of registered person, see, class of registered person shall prepare invoice containing particulars containing particulars in GST INV01. Then after obtaining a invoice reference number. So what is this INV01? INV01 is the model format of invoice. So they have specified in INV01 what are the clauses that should be finding a place in your invoice. So the contents as per INV01 should be there in your invoice for generation of the e-invoice. So that is very. So INV01 has got mandatory field and then optional field. So it is up to you to utilize the optional fields, but mandatory fields specified should be there. We need not go through that because now all the software was incorporated. But to understand the basics only, I am giving this. So from the 48.4, it should be notified. You have to get the IRN. You have to get the IRN by uploading the details as per GST INV01, and then you have to get the IRN, that is invoice reference number. So this is the important aspect. Invoice reference number, that is the unique number given by the government to your invoice. So this is the IRN. So from that, notification is very essential. Notification is very essential. So only the persons, the class of persons, see they have mentioned class of registered person notified. So the class of persons notified by the government only has to comply with the provisions of this 48 sub-rule 4. So what this notification says, there is a basic notification. There is a basic notification. The basic notification is 13/2020. So from that only all the subsequent amendments are made. See, for example, this notification initially came with the application of criteria 500 crores. 500 crores. So the person who got the aggregate average turnover above 500 crores are only expected to generate e-invoice initial stages. Then it was reduced to 100 crores, 50. Now ultimately it has come to 5 crores. So the person who got the aggregate turnover in preceding financial year. So preceding financial year means not this just suppose the financial year is now 25-26, it is not 24-25. From the 2017, you have to see that data. So if there is in 1 year, your aggregate turnover is more than 5 crores, then you have to generate the e-invoice. You have to generate the e-invoice. So the previous year, preceding financial year turnover is only criteria, not the current year. Suppose, see, all the preceding years, your turnover is around 4 crores. During 25-26, in the month of, say, September, your turnover has crossed 5 crores. Should you generate e-invoice? Not necessary. Not necessary. Because in the next year only it is applicable. In the middle of the year, if your turnover crosses even 5 crores, or even if you reach the 10 crores during the financial year, that is not essential. Only the preceding financial year aggregate turnover has to be calculated. So the aggregate turnover, here mentioned aggregate turnover. So the aggregate turnover should be as per the GST provisions. GST provisions. Because we have seen some of the cases, 5 crores cases. As per the P&L, the turnover is only 4 crore 80 lakhs. 4 crore 80 lakhs. The ASI was under the impression P&L 4 crore 80 lakhs, so it is not liable. But they had made a sale of fixed assets for 25 lakhs. So that is also part of the turnover, aggregate turnover. But this fixed asset sale will not be finding a place in your P&L account. This finds a place in your GST. So that return only has to be taken. So if you merely look into the P&L, the turnover will be 4.8 crores, so you will not be eligible or not liable. But if you include the sale of fixed assets, then it will cross the threshold limit of 5 crores. So this is an aspect that has to be seen. The aggregate turnover should be as per the GST provisions. So GST provision, sale of fixed asset, say it may be a machinery, it is also liable for GST. That also has to be considered. That also has to be considered. So the next question is how the e-invoice is generated. Now it is, we need not know, actually we need not know how the e-invoice is generated. Because if you look into the tally, suppose after generating, then you press the button, generate e-invoice get automatically generated. So it will go and then fetch the details. It will automatically insert the QR code and also the IRN. It will be imported into your invoice and then generated. So you need not know the how the e-invoice is generated, but some fundamental knowledge is necessary how the e-invoice generated. So generally, whenever the e-invoice generated, we think the data is fed into the portal and then generated. No, it is not like that. So you have to give the details. You have to give the details as contained in the INV01. INV01. After that, so after that, you upload these details as a JSON file, and then on that reading, you will get a QR code and then IRN. So you are not going to feed the data. You have to keep the data ready, and then you have to feed it as a JSON file. This is what it happens. So in Tally, as soon as you press generate e-invoice, that software itself converts into a JSON file, and then it uploads in the GST portal, and then GST e-invoice portal, and then it gets back the IRN and then incorporates. So this is how the e-invoice generation works. This is how e-invoice works. We get the important thing is QR code and then IRN, and then it is digitally signed by NIC IRP. So these three things happen on uploading the JSON file. Now the question is arising. There is a QR code. QR code. What is the purpose of this QR code? What it contains? What this contains? Because it is just like a general QR code. Suppose you are going to a shop or anything, and then you scan it, and then it will specify that shop name, and then you can make payment using the QR code. Similarly, there is a QR code. So there is a QR code means there is a embedded information is there. So when scanning that, you can get the information that are embedded in the QR code. Okay. So that is very, very important. For this purpose, how to scan or how to read that? For that, there is a app. In the Google Play Store, there is an app, e-Invoice QR Code Verifier. The name of the app is e-Invoice QR Code Verifier. You can install in your mobile, and then scan the QR code. So just you can install this app, and then you can open the app, and then you can scan the QR code in any e-invoice. So this is the method used by the department. That is the method used by the department also. So you can verify the authenticity of the invoice by scanning the QR code. So on scanning the QR code, what are the information that you get? You get these 10 details. 10 details you get on the scanning of the QR code. So you can try. Suppose anyone who has not tried, you can try, because everyone, whenever we see the QR code, yes, QR code is that, then e-invoice is that. We never used to scan the what is that contained in the QR code. When you scan the QR code in a beautiful tabulated form, you get these details: supplier GST, recipient GST, then document number, say invoice number, debit note or anything, then date, invoice value, number of line items, sketches and code, invoice reference, and then invoice generation date. All these details you get when you are scanning that QR code, when you are scanning the QR code. The next question arises. Okay, e-invoice refers, should we generate the e-invoice only for invoice, or should we generate for debit note and credit note also? The answer is you have to generate the debit note or credit note as a e-debit note or credit note only. See, this e-debit note or credit note arises only as long as there is a tax component in it. Suppose you can give a financial credit note. So without any tax component, you can give a credit note. That credit note cannot be e-credit note. But if there is a credit note that you are going to issue, and then it is going to reduce the already furnished taxable value, then it must be a e-credit note only. Then it must be an e-credit note only. But if it is not going to affect the tax component, and then you are going to give a financial credit note, that need not be as e-credit note. So the same thing applies to debit note also. Debit note also. So whenever there is a tax component affected, then it should be E only. See, is there any time limit? Time limit. Time limit for generation of the e-bill, e-invoice. So at the initial stage, at the time of introduction, they said there is no time limit. There is no time limit. But after that, see, now these things are controlled by GST and advisory only. There is no rules or anything. But this advisory and the e-invoice portal controls this generation of the e-invoice. Okay. There is an advisory dated 13/9/2023. So this advisory was made applicable to persons having a aggregate annual turnover more than 100 crores. There they say it cannot be more than 30 days. So more than 30 days. Suppose you are generating the invoice on 1st October, then by 30th, you must generate the e-invoice. You must generate the e-invoice. After that, you cannot generate the e-invoice. So this is very, very important. So the initial advisory was for the person having a turnover of 100 crores. Now, what is the situation? By 5/11/2024, this limit has been reduced to 10 crores. So the generation of the e-invoice applies only for person more than 2 crores, 5 crores. But the time limit for the person who has got the aggregate annual turnover more than 10 crores. Here they also have to take the IRN within 30 days of the invoice date. So the basis is your invoice date. So calculate from the invoice date, you have to report that as a e-invoice within 30 days if your turnover is more than 10 crores. More than 10 crores. So this is very, very important aspect that you must be having in mind. Can you transport the goods without a e-invoice? Why this question comes? Because you are given a time limit of 30 days to generate the e-invoice after the date of the invoice. So I've got the time up to 30 days. So now can I take the e-invoice afterwards? Now I transport the goods with an ordinary invoice. Though e-invoice provisions are applicable to me, I are given a time limit of 30 days. So till that time, can I transport the goods? No, you cannot transport that. You cannot transport that. But you are given an option. You need not take the physical copy. You need not take the physical copy of the invoice once you are under the e-invoice system. Under the e-invoice system. So they say you need for verification, electronically you can give. So if the QR code that is finding a place in the e-invoice is scanned in the WhatsApp, and then this WhatsApp image is given for the officers at the time of verification, that also will be considered. So instead of that, even the QR code can be given, or the embedded IRN. All these things can be given as a soft copy, or in the mobile you can show to them whenever there is a vehicle interception. But you must have the generate the e-invoice before the dispatch. Allahabad High Court decision. This is one of the important decision. Okay. So there the roving squad people catch that vehicle, and then he has got the e-invoice, everything. The contention is it did not bear the e-signature, or the signature of the authorized signatory is not there. So authorized signatory, the signature is not there, because the one of the rules specify it should have the signature of authorized signatory. So because of this, the vehicle was detained. So this party went to the High Court, Allahabad High Court. Allahabad High Court brought in to the knowledge of the department a provision a provision in Rule 46. There this provision says there need not be signature of the authorized signatory in case of electronic invoice. Whenever there is a e-invoice is required, there is no need for authorized signatory signature. So this is very, very important aspect, because even your vehicle can be intercepted. Sir, there is no authorized signatory signature. But that time you can bring it to his knowledge, the provisions of this, because there is no need for a authorized signatory signature in case if there is a electronic invoice. So this is one of the case which is beneficial to the assessee. Beneficial to the assessee. The name of the case is Cayman Taneja. See, I follow a portal called Tax Log. So in that citation only I have given. So this is a Cayman Taneja versus state of UP. This is a beneficial judgment for the assessee. And mentioning the vehicle invoice, mentioning the vehicle number at the time of generation of the e-way bill is not a mandatory condition. It is not a mandatory field. It is an optional field. INV01 that gives the format, it has been mentioned, this is a vehicle number is an optional field. But if there is a facility for you at the time of generation of the e-way bill, e-invoice itself, you can fill up the part B, that is vehicle number. Better to generate the same with the vehicle number if it is available at that time. Why I am saying? Because in this case, they have generated the e-invoice, but the vehicle number was wrongly filled in e-way bill. There was an interception and then penalty. So the matter went to the court. The court told, see, you have got the e-invoice. The e-invoice, the vehicle number is correct. So because there is some clerical error in part B of the e-way bill, you need not levy the maximum penalty of 200%. So that is the observation of the High Court. So if it is possible, this will be also helpful to you. This will also be helpful to you once if there are some mistakes in the e-way bill. And also Rule 48.1 and then Rule 48.2. 48.1 applies for goods and then 48.2 applies for services. There they mentioned. So invoices should be prepared in triplicate in case of goods and duplicate in case of services. But in case of the e-invoice, such provisions are not applicable. So if you are generating the e-way bill, there is no need for a triplicate invoice for goods. So previously there should be in the top, it has to be mentioned for the recipient, for the transport copy, for the supplier, that is a triplicate copy. That kind of duplicate invoices or triplicate invoices not required whenever you are under the e-invoice scheme. So this I have already mentioned. There is no definition for e-invoice. They may simply say invoice referred to in Rule 48.4. So there is no definition for invoice, but there is a definition for invoice, but there is no separate definition for e-invoice. Next one is the person whom these provisions are not applicable. So government department, they need not generate e-invoice. Local authority, SEZ unit, clearly mentioned here, SEZ units only. If that is a SEZ developer, see, developer is a person who is developing a SEZ unit. So SEZ developer, they have to generate, but SEZ unit need not generate the e-invoice. Okay. Then insurance or banking, because insurance and then banking, they will be generating the invoices for their bank charges or anything. They need not generate e-invoice. GTA also need not generate the e-invoice. Then passenger transportation, so exhibition, multiplex screens, when you are going for movie, all these 7 categories need not generate e-invoice. So e-invoice is mainly for B2B transaction only. So for these authorities, even there is a B2B transaction, there is no need for generation of the e-invoice. Another important question, and also some of the road interception we have faced for exports, because there is a concept. So they say it is for a registered person. In case of the export, we are exporting, the buyer is not a registered person in India. So we need not take the e-invoice. So that is one of the idea in the minds of the people. But for exports is also e-invoice is required. For exports is also e-invoice is required, unless the export is done by an SEZ unit. Unless so SEZ units exporting need not generate e-invoice, but other person who are exporting, they have to generate the e-invoice. So this is one of the important aspects that we find some of the lacuna. Some of the exporters, they think it is not required for the exports. Then e-invoice for services. Should we generate e-invoice for services? So that is also one of the important area that has to be seen. So e-invoice, see, because everybody thinks, yeah, for this purpose, services e-invoice is not required. No, e-invoice is required for services also. E-invoice is required for services also. Suppose you are a manufacturer of pump sets, and then you have got a service wing also, service wing. You are doing a service for a registered person. That service invoice too should be an e-invoice only. So that has to be considered. E-invoice is not required only for B2C transaction. For B2C transaction, even if it is a service, you have to generate an e-invoice. Next question. Can I make correction? There is a mistake. Okay, I have uploaded the invoice. Okay, instead of quantity 10, I have wrongly put 1. Can I make amendments, or can I correct that e-invoice? It is a genuine mistake. It is a typing clerical error. Can I make a correction to the e-invoice? See, once invoice is uploaded and then IRN is generated, it is not possible to make amendments to the e-invoice. So you cannot make any amendments to the e-invoice once IRN is generated. So for this purpose only, be careful whenever you are going to generate an e-invoice. Because now most of the times the software takes care, but somebody is going to generate it online through the portal. Be careful. Once generated, it cannot be modified. So what is the remedy? What is the remedy? You can cancel that e-invoice within a period of 24 hours of generation. So within a period of 24 hours of generation, you can cancel that invoice. You cannot make amendment, just you can cancel that invoice. But once you cancel that invoice, you cannot generate the invoice with the same number. So, sir, for the transportation, I have given that invoice. So shall I generate the? You cannot do anything. Once generated, you cannot generate using the same number. So this is one of the important aspects that has to be seen into, put into practice. So another important question that comes is, sir, what is the difference between e-invoice and then e-way bill? When that e-invoice comes, when e-way bill will come? So for that purpose only, I have given a tabulated turnover. So above the aggregate turnover, annual turnover more than 5 crores in the any of the preceding financial year, then for that e-invoice is required. E-way bill turnover is not the criteria. A registered person, the aggregate turnover criteria is not required. And then when required, for B2B transaction, business to business transaction or exports only, e-invoice is required. And then for B2C, also e-way bill is required. E-way bill for B2C also required. And B2B must, for B2C also required, but e-invoice B2C is not covered. Value of the bill, there is no value. Even if you are going to give a bill for 100 rupees to another registered person, then you have to generate e-invoice. But e-way bill for interstate sale or interstate supply, If the value exceeds 50,000 only, then you have to generate e-way bill. Otherwise, more than 1 lakh for intrastate you have to take. Type of supply required for both goods and services. E-way bill is required only for goods only. So this is one of the important difference between the e-way bill and then e-invoice. Next one is e-way bill and then e-invoices are linked. E-way bill and then e-invoices are linked. Now, once you are coming under the e-invoice provision, you have to generate the e-way bill from the e-invoice portal only. After generating the IRN only, you can generate the e-way bill. Without the IRN, e-way bill cannot be generated. E-way bill cannot be generated without an IRN. So this is a very, very important. So first you have to generate a e-invoice. Subsequently only you can generate a e-way bill. So this is one of the important aspects that has to be considered. So auto population of e-invoice details for e-way bill. See, for a part A of the e-way bill, you have to give the particulars, HSN, recipient number and everything. All this data are already fed in GST INV01 at the time of generation of the e-invoice. So naturally, this data will be populated in e-way bill. So there need not be, you need not feed it again. It will get populated, auto-populated from the e-way bill. So part A will get auto-populated. Part B, it is an option. Part B, you can fill it up from the portal or through the e-way bill portal. So this is an important aspect. So it gets automatically populated. So it's a modification of e-way bill. Modification of the e-way bill is also required sometimes. Sometimes you have to modify the e-way bill. Now, what is the procedure? How the e-way bill has to be modified? So you have generated the e-way bill in the e-invoice portal, but you have to modify that. There is no provision in the e-invoice portal to cancel the e-way bill. There is no provision in the e-invoice portal for cancelling the e-way bill. So you have generated the e-way bill through the e-invoice portal, but can you cancel the e-way bill in the e-invoice portal? No. The portals are, both the portals are different. E-invoice portal and the e-way bill portal are different. So sometimes due to vehicle breakdown, you have to extend the time. You have to extend the time before the 8 a.m. So if you are going to extend the time, that also cannot be done in the e-invoice portal. That can be done only in the e-way bill portal, though you have generated the e-way bill from the e-invoice portal. So this is one of the important aspects that has to be seen. Case insensitivity. So this is one of the recent notification. So this will come from 1st June 2025. So already I mentioned. So if you cancel that e-way bill, you cancel the e-invoice, you cannot take the e-invoice within the same number. So now the people use one of the loophole. So suppose there is a bill ABC, prefix ABC1. They will put it in small characters ABC, then they are able to take the e-invoice again for the same number. So for this purpose, they are going to make this alphabetic as case insensitivity. So this will not be read as a small letter or capital letters. It will letters as it will be converted into a capital and then it will be read. So there will not be any duplication of the same invoice using the small letter or the combination of small letter and then capital letter. So for this purpose only, already in GSTR 1 they have introduced this. The same has been introduced in e-invoice also. So this is one of the advisory given. But naturally, this type of errors coming up is very rare nowadays, given the extent of using of the softwares for preparation of the e-invoice. Then business continuity plan. See, last time during the March or something, and then December, there were some breakdown in the system. We were not able to generate the e-way bill or e-invoice not able to generate. Now they have given an advisory. There are alternate portals are there for generation of the e-invoice. There are alternate portals are there for generation of the e-invoice. They advise us to go to this and then register, because every portal requires your registration first, and then only you can generate the e-way bill or e-invoice. So for that, they advise us to use the multiple portals for generation of the e-invoice. So this is the advisory given. So these are all some of the other e-invoice portal. They say the first two portals are interpolatable. So once you register here, then you can take it from e-invoice 2 or e-invoice 1. For others, you have to register, and then you can get the advice of your software vendors or ERP service providers for this integration. So that if there is a problem in one portal, you can automatically switch over to another portal and then take the e-invoice without disruption to any of your business process. So for this purpose, they advise us to use other portals available also. See, there is a FAQ. There is an FAQ given in the e-invoice portal. If you have got a time, go through that FAQs. I give it as a practical tip. It has got solutions for most of the situation that you will be facing. Most of the situation you are facing, but sometimes there is some mistakes are there. Okay. Is there any time limit for generation of the e-way bill? See, there is a time limit for generation of the e-invoice from the base date of the invoice. Now, after generation of the e-invoice, is there any time limit within which we have to take the e-way bill? They have given the previous FAQ. They said there is no time limit. But now there is a fresh time limit specified for taking the e-way bill. So the time limit is 180 days. 180 days from the base invoice date for e-way bill. So this is a new time limit. Okay. Now the question may arise, why there is a 180 days time limit? There is no need and all. But situation can come. For example, project exports. For project exports, the exports will be taking place from Mumbai port, but goods have to be transported from Chennai. So they will be making the invoice after the vehicle is ready, and then the goods have to be assembled at Mumbai for various locations. So for this purpose, there will be delay in generation of the e-way bill. Now there is a limit of 180 days for taking the e-way bill. So from your e-invoice date also, e-way bill has to be taken within 180 days. So this is very, very important aspect. Now the question comes, for the RCM invoices, should it be e-invoice or not? RCM invoices, e-invoice or not? That is a question that will be coming to everyone's mind. So for this ease of understanding, I consider the RCM into two broad categories. RCM received from registered person, RCM received from unregistered person. See, sometimes you will be receiving the services from the registered person, but they will be giving an invoice, but the liability will be on you. For example, GTA sometimes may be a registered person, but he is giving a invoice to you. In that he will mention that you have to pay under the reverse charge. For this purpose only, in invoice there is a specific cell is that reverse charge mechanism available, yes or no. So for this purpose only, excuse me. See, security services is liable under reverse charge when it is received by a registered person. When it is received by a registered person, if the provider is a proprietorship concern or a partnership concern, then it has to be discharged by the another person. Okay, another corporate entity. So A is a proprietorship concern. He is registered. because he is giving services to a company and also individual houses. For this individual, the total amount is more than 20 lakhs. So naturally, he has to get registered. For this individual houses, he has to pay under the forward charge. For the reverse charge, they will be paying. So whenever he is filing GSTR1 for ABC Private Limited, he will say, yes, reverse charge applicable, yes. So naturally, the department will know that ABC has to discharge. So here I am saying, ABC, say the A is a proprietorship, ABC is a private limited, he is not registered. A is not registered because this case, it is less than 20 lakhs. So when he is registered, he must issue a tax invoice or bill of supply. So bill of supply, and then he has to indicate reverse charge has to be paid. So that is the important criteria. When he is an unregistered person, there is an obligation. There is an obligation on the recipient to create a self-invoice according to section 31(3)(f). So this registered person has to create a invoice. So create a invoice. So this is very, very important. So here, whenever he is getting a service from an unregistered person, it is not applicable to a registered person. Whenever he is getting a service from a registered person, he has to create a self-invoice. Now the question arises, should this self-invoice be a e-invoice? Should this self-invoice be a e-invoice? Self-invoice created for the services received from unregistered person or for the goods received from the unregistered person. Should it be a e-invoice? Here also, this has been clarified in FAQ. This also has been clarified in FAQ. There they say, if you are eligible for e-invoicing, all the invoices, including RC invoices issued by the supplier, need to be registered. So for them also, the reverse charge invoices, it should be e-invoice only. So this is very, very important point that has to be taken note as a practical advice. Now, e-invoice in foreign currency. E-invoice in foreign currency. So, I am raising an invoice. So, this invoice also be in a foreign currency or Indian currency? Even if there is only foreign currency, for the purpose of V01, you have to mention the Indian currency also. So, for Indian currency must find a place in your e-invoice, though you are raising a invoice in a foreign currency. So this is one of the exporters you have to keep in mind. You have to raise the e-invoice. That e-invoice should be in a Indian currency only. Indian currency or combination of foreign currency. But Indian currency should find a place there. Indian currency should find place there. Now, the question arises for ISD. ISD, it has become mandatory from 1/4/2025. So, the ISD gives the invoices to its various branches or the various locations under the PAN. Should this ISD invoice be an e-invoice? No. This ISD invoice need not be an e-invoice. Ordinary invoice will be sufficient. Why this conclusion is taken? Because the ISD invoice need not contain HSN. ISD invoice, HSN is not required. But for generation of the e-invoice, HSN field is mandatory. So by this, when ISD invoice omits HSN, it cannot generate a e-invoice. It cannot generate a e-invoice. So I conclude that for the ISD invoice, e-invoice is not at all required. Now coming to the last part. What are the consequences of non-generation of e-invoice? This is very, very crucial. Very, very crucial. Sub-rule 5 of 48. It is a very, very dangerous provision. I would say it is a very, very dangerous provision. What this subsection sub-rule says, every invoice issued by a person to whom sub-rule 4 applies. See, sub-rule 4 I have already shown. it is the sub rule which specify the class of persons notified should take invoices as per that. So that is the e-invoice provision. So every invoice issued by to whom sub rule 4 applies in any manner other than the manner specified in sub rule shall not be treated as an invoice. So if a person to whom e-invoice provision applies, he does not generate e-invoice, that is not at all considered as an invoice. So what is the consequences? When it is not considered as an invoice, the recipient cannot claim ITC. The recipient cannot claim ITC. So this will be affecting your recipients very badly when you fail to generate the e-invoice when it is applicable to you. So other penalties can be levied on you. Penalty. So penalty under 129 it can be levied. 122. 122 penalty can be levied. So it is equal to the 10,000 or amount of the tax thought to be evaded. So the equal to the tax amount, the penalty can be levied. Whenever you fail to take the e-invoice, it will be considered as a violation of the provisions. So the equal amount of tax amount can be levied as a penalty in addition to collecting the amount from you as a tax. So these are all the consequences of non-generation. With this, we shall come to the end of this session, and then if at all any clarification, let me answer. Thank you. Thank for your continued support. Suppose the invoice is not cancelled in 24 hours. What should I do? Okay. So what is the reason for not cancelling that? Suppose goods have not been transported. So in that case, you give a credit note, e-credit note, and then do the needful. See, what is the time limit for generation of the e-way bill from the date of invoice? Okay. See, what is the base date? Base date, there's a question because I use the word base date. Base date is the date of generation of the invoice, not the e-invoice. Base date is the generation of the invoice. So from this base date, you have to generate a e-invoice within a period of 30 days. Within a period of 30 days. Again, this there is a limitation has been set for generation of the e-way bill 180 days from the date of the base date of the invoice, not the date of e-invoice. So e-invoice will have a base date as original date, and then it will be giving the generation of the e-way bill, e-invoice. So from the base date only the 180 days is calculated. So what is the time limit for generation of the e-way bill from the date of the invoice? So for the e-way bill, that will be generated within a period of 180 days. 180 days. Whether threshold limit is applicable to exporters also. There is no threshold as such for e-invoice. So e-invoice, any export, even the amount is 100, you have to generate it as a e-invoice only. Sir, we have not raised, one of the queries, we have not e-invoice for RCM. Now you can raise it. Now you raise it, and then you can do that. Now you raise the invoice and then get the credit. E-invoice mandatory for export. Again and again, I am telling this is one of the misconception. For exports also, e-invoice is a must. Otherwise, whenever you are transporting the goods to the port for export purpose, it will be detailed in the absence of the e-invoice. So ensure that is the importance of this webinar itself, because there were so many queries. The exporters are not generating the e-invoice. So for this purpose only, this and see, mainly purpose of this today's webinar topic was chosen for reverse charge, ISD, and then exports. These are the three aspects that I wanted to stress. For exports also, e-invoice is required. So another query, e-invoice mandatory for export invoice. Yes, e-invoice is a mandatory for exports also. One of the transaction we paid GST, but non-generation of EVA bill now filed appeal. Yes, there is a good chance to win the appeal. You can win the appeal easily. Sir, e-invoice should be generated for B2C transaction also. No, for B2C transaction, e-invoice is not required. E-invoice is not required. See, e-credit note generation of the time. Yes, e-credit note, the generation of the time limit is that time limit before the end of the 30th November. So for that, the e-credit note has to be issued. Sir, 180 days from the date of e-invoice. No, from the date of the base invoice. That is again I want to stress, because that will show the base invoice date only will appear in the e-invoice, and that on that basis only generation of the e-invoice will be shown. So the 180 days time limit for generation of the e-way bill will applicable from the original invoice date, not the e-invoice date. Is there any E required if the 0% and exempted supply? No. See, you cannot combine. You can take it as a separate invoice. Separate invoice, that is also has to be only e-invoice only. Yeah, we have availed service from an advocate. They have charged 50,000. He is an unregistered person. Yes, if you are liable for e-invoice, then you have to generate e-invoice only. RCM self-invoice, that is I already clarified. RCM self-invoice, I already clarified. Thank you for all your participation. If you have got any further queries, kindly send us a mail. We will be sending you the reply individually. Thanks for your wonderful queries and then overwhelmed by your participation. Thank you one and all. And then give your feedback to our mail ID, solutions@zentaxclinic.com. Thank you one and all.